every now and then, I like to cover the wonderful treasure trove of fighting game glitches on the channel, and as I've dedicated videos to Street Fighter 2 and 4's bugs, I think it's about time we look at what came in between. Generally speaking, Street Fighter 3 is a blanket term used to describe 3 separate titles, so it goes without saying that there are many glitches for us to analyze. After researching my butt off at unhealthy hours, I've created a list of my personal favorites to showcase. From game-breaking bugs to minor exploits that lack major ramifications, we'll be covering all sorts of Street Fighter 3 shenanigans, so make sure to grab a snack and learn just how faulty these games can be if you know how to push them to their limits. Starting off with one of Street Fighter 3's most beloved combatants, Elena first made her mark on the series with 1996's New Generation. Unfortunately, despite her gravity-defying capoeira skills, she suffers from a glitch involving recovery frames. When a character is attacked in such a way that it leaves them facing away from their opponent, it's supposed to leave them like this long enough for follow-ups to connect, but not so long that you can loop these follow-ups forever. For whatever reason, Elena has more back-turned recovery frames than any other character, allowing Alex to loop his medium flash chop. That's right, if Alex connects with a medium or heavy flash chop from anywhere on the screen, there's nothing stopping him from turning Street Fighter into a single-player game. The timing for this sequence can be a little bit tricky, but if you input the next flash chop after Elena's sound effect finishes playing, you should get it every time. Although this bug isn't anything crazy, it can easily be fixed by bringing Elena's recovery frames in line with the other fighters, and on the bright side, at least low-tier Alex now has something to brag about. Ibuki is up next, bringing a unique blend of ninja techniques and target combos to the table. Whether you're on the ground or taking to the skies, there's a total of 21 target strings to take advantage of when moving in for a combo. You can even do them after her infamous close heavy kick for a short air route, but sometimes this can go horribly wrong. Under normal circumstances, you would launch the enemy, cancel the recovery into a super jump, and strike them a few times before returning to neutral. There's obviously nothing weird here, but sometimes the game gets confused when attempting to track Ibuki's coordinates. If this happens, she'll enter her standing animation in the air, with her kunai being the only available special move. This can even randomly crash the game from time to time, but I wasn't able to find definitive reasoning explaining why this is the case. Believe me when I say that I tried for ages to get this to work on my end, but just wasn't able to. A quirk I noticed from watching demonstrative videos is that Ibuki somehow uses a grounded button in the air following the target combo's first hit. Brute forcing this simply didn't work, and it makes me wonder if it was ever patched out in future New Generation revisions. If you've ever seen a match of Third Strike, then you will have noticed the classic strategy of running away and going beast mode on a button to build meter. I could speak for ages about how the simple notion of whiffing attacks to generate resources has a great impact on many fighting game metas, but in the context of New Generation, we can look no further than Sean to see just how terrifying it can be. Like with any other character, our yellow gi-wearing friend is able to perform this technique, but if you're holding back while doing so, his meter gain is doubled. For example, instead of having to whiff heavy punch 28 times to reach full meter with Super Art 3, holding back reduces the number of required whiffed attacks to 23. We can even see this taking place in real time on the meter. I'm not sure why this happens, but as New Generation supers have insane damage and stun potential, you'll absolutely want to do this when possible. Believe it or not, but we're already at the final New Generation glitch. I tried looking for more, but just wasn't able to find any during my research, so allow me to close this section out with a bang. Expanding the game's roster to play as Gill, the colourfully symmetrical final boss, sounds awesome, right? Normally, you would never be able to do such a thing, but here's where the next glitch comes in. Before you insert a coin into that beautiful arcade machine, wait for the attract screen to reach the section where Ryu's super is chosen, and when you see the other two disappearing, press start on player 2's side. This will allow you to select your character and super as usual. After this, make it all the way through the arcade ladder until you reach Gill's stage. When the screen is scrolling downwards during the intro, press start on the player 1 side. If performed correctly, the character select screen will render but with no fighter portraits, and when the match begins, player 1 will be in control of Gill. His move list as an unplayable boss character isn't just for show, as there's a complete set of normals, specials, and even a super to experiment with. With how you have to go through nearly all of arcade mode to trigger this bug, I wonder how it was discovered in the first place, but in my view, the payoff is worth it, as Gill is a lot of fun. Moving into Second Impact territory reveals yet another Gill-related glitch. What is it with this guy anyway? By fighting your way to Gill's temple with Ken, wait for him to activate Resurrection. At this point, inputting a light Shoryuken should keep Ken stuck in the air, similar to Ibuki's new generation glitch. When this airborne state is active, you can't block or do more than one action that isn't a parry, so it might not seem like a big deal at first. However, inputting a Tatsu will make Ken fly out of the Earth's atmosphere, only to loop back around and gain speed over time. Eventually, the game will freak out, but if you made it this far, the glitch will fix itself after a few seconds. I suspect this is caused by the game not being able to calculate Ken's screen position, and since he's never meant to enter a state like this in the first place, Capcom's programming gets really confused and just decides to go wild. As far as I know, Ken is the only fighter who can trigger this bug, suggesting that there's something specifically about his DP that gives the game trouble. Either way, it's a relatively simple exploit that leads to hilarious results, so I recommend trying it on an emulator. Just avoid doing this on actual hardware, as you may softlock the game. I'm sure we're all familiar with Street Fighter's iconic suite of bonus stages, with Second Impact's offering being more or less the same as Third Strike's. Aside from aesthetic changes, the goal of parrying every basketball Sean throws at you is the same, but there's an easy way for us to cheat the minigame. I mean, it defeats the purpose of learning how to properly parry, but don't worry about it. Unlike most taunts, Yun's hat boasts a hitbox, meaning it can make contact with opposing forces. You might think that this wouldn't do anything in the parry minigame, since, it's not a parry, but I guess Capcom would disagree. If you hold the taunt to keep it going, Yun will not only effortlessly deflect all of the incoming projectiles, but he'll have a smug grin on his face the entire time. Out of curiosity, I tested the exploit out in Third Strike and found that it still works. Honestly, I don't consider the interaction between the basketballs and Yun's hat to be a glitch. Rather, the minigame giving you a perfect score at the end is what strikes me as odd. You would think that it's programmed to only award points upon a successful parry, but I guess any maneuver that deflects them is counted, intentionally or otherwise. Making his ring debut in Street Fighter's wacky universe is the German giant himself, Hugo. Despite putting all of his might into some truly devastating wrestling techniques, he's easily the worst character in Second Impact for reasons that would take far too long to explain, but as luck would have it, one of them is our next glitch. If you're playing as a Shoto or Elena, have a full bar of meter and land a kick throw against Hugo, you can use a super to score an OTG combo. Every one of Ryu, Ken, Akuma, and Elena's supers work for this, except for healing, obviously. Now you might think that Hugo could just mash down to quickly get off his back and escape this predicament via a quick rise, but according to the Super Combo Wiki website, Second Impact eats your inputs during a super freeze. Try as you might, but there's no way for him to get out of the setup. On the flip side, Hugo does have high health and stun values, so he can survive a drawn-out battle. However, with how much damage supers do in this game, it might not matter when things are really down to the wire. As with all good Street Fighter games, Second Impact allows you to square up against a secret boss fighter should you meet hidden requirements. If you reach this criteria, Akuma will take a page out of Gill's book and resurrect from the dead, only this time he's turned into Shin Akuma. This is a fantastic harkening back to his debut appearance in Super Turbo, but what happens if he didn't get much sleep the night before? In this case, the mysterious demon will remain motionless on the ground, soft-locking the game. You know how Street Fighter 3 lets you continue attacking the enemy once their stun bar is maxed out? Well, if you defeat Akuma via a combo that stuns him, the game has no idea how to progress. Characters with multi-hit strings are perfect for executing this glitch, as these types of attacks provide some leeway for when you aren't fully confident in your stun output. Like with the Floating Ken exploit, please don't try this on a real machine, you'll probably make some enemies and get kicked out. Ever thought that Yun's Grenadian super was a bit too strong? If so, then this will make it even more of a nightmare. You're welcome. After waiting for his meter to slightly drain, input the game's universal overhead while pressing every punch button. This requires frame-perfect precision, but if you've done it right, your meter will slightly increase. After it expires, you'll notice that the meter display starts to glitch out a little, in a kind of a surreal way. This is great though, as it leads to Yun having infinite meter. Comboing EX moves into Gnajin under normal circumstances is always impossible due to the single stock, with the glitch allowing you to circumvent this limitation with ease. What I find funny is that even if you don't have the bug's timing burned into your muscle memory, Yun is still an amazing character, one who can body much of the roster. A glitch of this nature only serves to buff an already strong top tier, and I wonder if it was ever used competitively. Anyway, if you ever want to mess with the game's HUD or just to troll your friends, you know what glitch to try out. We've finally made it to Third Strike, and what better way to start off than with one of its most famous glitches. On version 990512 specifically, defeating Makoto with Ken's neutral throw will freeze the game, and it's not like Second Impact's Shinakuma bug where the match softlocks, this actually crashes the entire cabinet. If you parry the first hit of her Super Art 2 and then do the throw, there's a chance that Makoto will begin levitating as the game scrambles to determine her coordinates. Actually, this can happen without super parries, but in my experience, I was only able to crash the game when performing a throw in neutral. The Cutting Room Floor website explains that this exploit can brick CPS3 arcade boards, and as they're already complicated pieces of work, I wouldn't recommend attempting this outside of an emulator. With that said, the bug has been thankfully patched out of the Third Strike revision that Fightcade uses, so don't worry, you're not going to get griefed online by trolls in your ranked matches. This is quite an easy bug to visually process as a spectator, but I wonder what's going on in the game's code behind the scenes to make it happen. Whatever the case may be, Capcom rightfully saw fit to remove it from Third Strike's later arcade revisions and home ports, so you'll need to track down an original version to test the glitch for yourself. Have you ever thought to yourself, man, I just love fighting Gill, I wish he was in every one of arcade mode stages? Probably not, but if you can't help but be intrigued by such a notion, there's a glitch that allows us to do exactly this. After the intro movie reaches its conclusion, a CPU-controlled character select screen will appear. As soon as the game selects Ibuki, you can see the oval shape for her super arts, but not any of their text. At this point, quickly insert a coin and press start to take control for yourself. From here, if you've done it right, Alex should not only appear alongside Ibuki's supers, but a stage select feature with near infinite choices. Jokes aside, this turns every one of Third Strike's arcade ladder battles into bouts with Gill. The fact that this glitch's only purpose is to make you repeatedly battle against one of the series' most frustrating bosses is hilarious to me, and unless you're a masochist, I wouldn't recommend trying it out. Sorry Gill, but I would rather fight the other characters. If you're looking for a glitch that breaks the mold by not being something silly that just destroys the game, then look no further than the active super freeze. Upon activating a super, the screen freezes, plays a large visual effect around the initiator, and the game prevents either player from inputting any commands. Not every super has the same startup frame data of course, but the developers never intended for anyone to move around during this freeze. However, if a projectile is destroyed on the same frame as a super freeze begins, the character who didn't start up their super can freely move around during this period. Just by virtue of being a frame-perfect technique, it's not going to happen often, and it can't happen at all in certain matchups, but you can legitimately score an advantage over your opponent using this bug. An old YouTube video I found from ages ago demonstrates how numerous fighters can use this technique from a variety of ranges, with my favourite allowing Hugo to leap across the screen for a punish. I'd be lying if I said that active super freezes are a common occurrence, but they do provide extra game depth for those concerned with pushing Third Strike to its limits. As a nice little detail, Necro's regular throw will turn into a physics-breaking suplex when performed against an opponent who has their back exposed. However, if Dudley decides to pull up to the fight, he can turn this on its head in a very bizarre way. Upon punishing a failed cross-counter with Necro Suplex, neither fighter will be able to press any buttons. They can move around just fine, but they can't attack until they jump. If one of them breaks their curse and gets parried by the other, they will begin to rapidly levitate towards the corner. I wish I could explain why this happens, but after playing around with it for the better half of an afternoon, I'm unable to determine what in the game's code causes this to take place. Either way, after a character takes flight, the game will automatically fix itself after a few seconds, so it's nothing too crazy. With that said, I recommend using it to surprise your friends at locals. You know, some of the glitches we've covered so far have a somewhat likely chance of occurring in a live match at random, but with how this next one requires a 12 mirror match, I can't see it happening for real anytime soon. As arguably the most unique super in Street Fighter history, X-Copy allows 12 to temporarily morph into his enemy, gaining all of their normals and specials in the process. Conversely, what happens if 12 attempts to transform into himself? Well, he just stays the same, obviously. However, there's one minor caveat that separates a regular 12 from one who is in X-Copy form. His voice lines are gone. This is already a bit strange, but if he's knocked out by a light attack in certain game revisions, something super weird happens. Your ears aren't deceiving you, dear viewer, as that is indeed Hugo's theme being played. Despite attempting this bug on Fightcade and MAME, I wasn't able to replicate it for myself, but after finding a Reddit post that concerns the second round's music starting way earlier than usual, I'm convinced that X-Copy interactions between 12s in a mirror match messes with the game's audio programming. Returning from earlier is Sean, meaning that he's involved in at least one glitch in each version of Street Fighter 3. Way to go! As one of the easiest glitches known to man in any video game, holding down after performing his command roll will cause him to spin in place every few seconds. Doing this in a mirror match can lead to some synchronized spinning action, although I like to view this as a mating dance of sorts. As the bug has zero impact on gameplay and only serves to leave Sean, one of the worst characters in the game, at a disadvantage, it was never removed from any of Third Strike's re-releases. It's definitely the least consequential exploit in the video, but I wanted to include it as a nice intermission between all the crashes and character freezing. On to something far more severe now. When Urien is battling Remy in his spare time from trying to head the Illuminati, he'll eventually throw out a devastating Aegis Reflector to trap the unsuspecting Frenchman in place. In this scenario, if Remy parries the first hit of Aegis and inputs a forward throw, the first couple of grab frames will play out as normal, but the projectile's subsequent hits will interrupt the animation, leaving Urien frozen in time. He'll automatically make a slight movement after a few seconds to a more normal-looking stance, but he's still completely stuck. Desperately attempting to mash out of this state is a fruitless endeavor, as Urien's input detection simply stops working until Remy damages him. As he's still technically in a being grabbed animation, it makes sense why Urien isn't able to fight back. At this point, there's nothing stopping Remy from building meter and letting our loincloth buddy out at the last second to win via a time over. In fact, it's best to do this, as if Urien is stuck when the clock strikes 0, the game will soft lock. The silver lining to this is that if Japanese players are going for it at events, it must be tournament legal, so go nuts. Keeping up with the trend of timing-based exploits that freeze enemies in place, we can use a secret method of Necros to permanently electrocute poor Q. After parrying the first hit of his Super Art 2, wait until the second punch's wind-up animation roughly reaches this pose, and then quickly input Necro's Super Art 1. The idea is to strike Q so late into his attack that it trades with Necro, and if you get it right, our mysterious companion is forever stuck in place. If Necro has the life lead, he can easily wait until the timer is about to reach 0 and win that way, although this isn't exactly sportsmanlike. My speculation is that the portion of Necro's super that triggers the game's electrocution animation frames is interrupted by the first hit of Q's super in such a way that it doesn't cut its effects off. In other words, Q punches the rubber man so hard that his super just breaks. This isn't the easiest bug in the world to perform, but if you can consistently get the parry timing down, landing the Super Art 1 shouldn't be too difficult. Flying back to 12 reveals yet another exploit, one that involves his old buddy Oro. Glad you could make the video, dude. With full meter, have Oro summon his legally distinct Spirit Bomb, and then attempt to punish with 12 Super Art 2. With the right timing, he'll clearly make contact with Oro's projectile, but then keep moving? Wait, are there two 12s? Yeah, you aren't seeing things weirdly, this glitch lets you duplicate 12. Within the confines of a real match, the timer would end before both players could generate unthinkable amounts of meter. Training mode, however, lets us do exactly this, and although I kept repeating this sequence for ages, the game capped out at two 12 clones on screen at once. If Oro's fireball makes contact with any of these stationary sprites, it'll soar off-screen in an instant, preventing the entire screen from being filled. Eventually, I could feel my fingers starting to break from repeating so many quarter circle motions, but I do have to say, this is one of Third Strike's funniest glitches. Not wanting to be forgotten before the video ends, Urien has decided to stick around for the final glitch. Well, it's more like a series of glitches, but as they're all triggered by a carefully timed Aegis Reflector, I've decided to feature them here. If Urien uses the super as time is about to run out, all sorts of wacky outcomes can pop up out of nowhere, and it's all thanks to how the game handles its time over display. Unlike many other Capcom fighters where 0 seconds on the clock doesn't immediately end the match, Third Strike ends things the frame that the number 1 disappears. From Urien interrupting his clone's win animation, sending him away from the screen's boundaries, to hurling a helpless Effie through the space-time continuum, all sorts of unintentional behaviors can stem from Aegis Reflector. I tried experimenting with other characters during my recording session, but just wasn't able to come up with anything impressive, so I wonder if Urien and Necro are the only true candidates for this bug. And those are my favourite glitches throughout Street Fighter III's trifecta of revisions. Like I said in the intro, please feel free to let me know about any bugs I may have missed for us to learn more. I had a great time researching all of these exploits, attempting to replicate them for myself, and editing whatever my feeble hands could conjure up in training mode. Even though it took me a bit longer than expected, it was good fun to coast around these games' rosters and analyze most of their characters. Not all of them were featured, sorry Ryu, but hey, some of the forgotten fighters got to make the spotlight their own. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you and your time, and I hope you had fun. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.